3 hidden contracts that every dark chosen one is forced to sign. There are contracts that are not signed on paper. They are not written in ink, nor do they require your consent in the way you think. You don't remember agreeing to them, but you did, not with words, but with your energy, with your choices, with the way your soul leaned into the flame when everyone else ran from the fire. And if you are listening to this, truly listening, then you already know you are not like the others. You never were. You have been marked not in the physical, but in the unseen, and the spiritual world has taken notice. That's why everything in your life has felt heavier, deeper, more intense. You are not cursed, but you have been chosen. And for those who are chosen in the dark, there are always contracts. The first of these hidden contracts is the contract of isolation. This one is cruel, but necessary. And it's the one that breaks most people before they ever get to the second. It doesn't announce itself. It creeps in slowly. You start noticing that people don't understand you, that you feel disconnected during conversations that used to feel normal, that your laughter doesn't come as easily. You try to explain your thoughts, your visions, your insights, and people look at you like you're speaking in frequencies they can't hear. And the truth is, you are.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
This isolation isn't punishment, it's preparation. Because when you are meant to walk a path that's invisible to most, the noise of the crowd becomes a poison. So your life starts to strip itself. Friends leave. Lovers grow distant. Family begins to feel like strangers. And for a while, you think it's just bad luck. But it's not. It's the first clause in the contract. The removal of all that would tether you to a version of yourself that is no longer real. But here's the deeper truth: you are never truly alone. The moment you sign the contract of isolation, you awaken forces both dark and divine that begin to walk with you. Some come to test, others come to teach, but none come by accident. Every spiritual guide, every shadow figure in your dreams, every synchronicity that pulls you deeper into mystery, it's all by design. The isolation is the void, and in the void you begin to see what most never will, that reality is not solid. That time is not linear. That death is not the end. You start to remember things you never learned and forget things you used to care about. The question is, will you resist the void, or will you let it consume you? Because the void is not empty. It's full of unspoken truths, and once you start seeing them, you can't unsee. That's where the second hidden contract begins to whisper. But before we go there, let's linger here a moment. Why do you think so many people fear silence? Why is solitude treated like a disease in our world? Maybe because deep down they know in silence the truth gets loud. And most people are not ready to hear the truth about themselves. But you are. That's why you're still listening. So let me ask you something that might change everything. What if your loneliness was never a flaw, but a sign that your soul was preparing for a different kind of connection, one that exists beyond words, beyond form, beyond this dimension? We, the dark chosen ones, are not meant to fit in. We are not meant to be liked. We are meant to remember. And remembering is painful. That's the cost of waking up in a world that feeds on sleep. When you begin to see the illusion begins to attack. That's why the contract of isolation often comes with spiritual warfare. Suddenly, you're not just battling sadness, you're confronting entities in your sleep, feeling presences in your room, hearing voices that speak in symbols and riddles. You think you're going crazy, but you're not. You're being initiated. And if you survive that initiation, if you choose to keep going, even when everything in you wants to go back to the comfort of ignorance, then you move into the second contract. But most never get there. They break under the weight of being unseen. They beg for normalcy. They trade their awakening for acceptance. But you didn't. Or maybe you almost did. Maybe you still think about it. That's okay. Doubt is part of the path. But what matters is that you're here, now, still listening. That means the contract is still active. Let me tell you something that no one else will. This isolation is sacred. It's where the real work happens. It's where you start to hear your true voice, not the one shaped by society, but the one buried under years of programming, trauma, and expectation. It's where you meet your spirit guides in dreams, where you start to see numbers repeating, symbols appearing, messages coming to you through songs, strangers, even animals. It's where you begin to realize that this world is a mirror, and your reality is bending to reflect the frequency you're learning to hold. But the danger here is ego, because once you realize you're different, you might start to believe you're better. And that's the first trap. The darkness will feed your pride to keep you from humility. And without humility, you lose access to the deeper realms. So remember this, being chosen does not make you superior. It makes you responsible. You are not here to ascend and escape. You are here to descend and transform. To bring light into shadows, not to avoid them. So take a breath now. Feel that tension in your chest. That's the contract calling. It's reminding you that everything you've lost was never truly yours. It was borrowed to prepare you. And now the debt is being collected. You are being stripped down to your essence, not to punish you, but to reveal you. You have been chosen by the dark not to destroy you, but to initiate you into the forgotten mysteries. You are not the victim of this path. You are its architect. You chose this before you were born. And every time you chose truth over comfort, every time you walked away from what looked good in order to seek what felt right, you signed your name again. So now I ask you, are you willing to go deeper? Are you willing to lose more in order to become more? Because the second contract is coming, and it doesn't care about your comfort. It only cares about your evolution. The curse of awareness, why the chosen ones can never return to sleep. There comes a moment in every chosen one's journey where they realize the most terrifying truth of all. There is no going back. Once your eyes have seen, they cannot unsee. Once your soul has remembered, it cannot forget. This is the second hidden contract, the contract of awareness, and it is the most subtle, the most seductive, and the most painful of them all. Because unlike the contract of isolation, which strips you of others, the contract of awareness strips you of illusions, and that can be far more brutal. You begin to see the threads behind the curtain, the patterns in people's behaviors, the lies in their words, the pain hiding beneath their smiles, the energy behind their intentions. It's like waking up in a room full of actors still playing their roles, and you're the only one who realizes it's all a play. But the script suddenly makes no sense to you. You can't pretend anymore. You can't laugh at the same jokes. You can't chase the same dreams. Everything that used to sparkle now feels hollow, and the world begins to feel like a haunted house, beautiful, but filled with ghosts of what could have been. This is the curse of awareness. You can never return to sleep. You can't go back to your old life because you're no longer the person who lived it. You've seen behind the veil, you've tasted the truth, and now everything false burns your tongue. But here's where the danger lies. Awareness without grounding becomes madness. You start to feel like no one gets you. And that's when the ego sneaks in again, whispering that you must be the only one, that no one else is awake, that you're above them now, that you don't need to listen, that you don't need to feel, that you're done learning. That's the trap. Because true awareness doesn't isolate, it integrates. It sees the pain in others and reaches out, not to fix, but to witness. It sees the illusion not as an enemy, but as a teacher. It sees the sleeping ones not as fools, but as souls still dreaming their way toward the light. And most of all, true awareness remembers that awakening is not a destination, but a process, a spiral, a constant death and rebirth. So, Let me ask you now, what illusions have you been clinging to, even after waking up? What parts of your old self do you secretly miss, even though you know they weren't real? Because the second contract doesn't just give you sight. It tests your ability to hold what you see without turning it into judgment. It asks, can you see someone's shadow and still love them? Can you see your own and not run? You'll notice that as you grow more aware, people start reacting to you differently. Some will be drawn to you without understanding why. Others will be repelled with strange intensity. That's because your energy has changed. You now carry a frequency that disrupts illusions by simply existing. You don't even need to speak. Your presence becomes a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see their reflection. This is why many chosen ones become hermits, wanderers, or mystics, not because they hate the world, but because they feel everything so deeply it becomes overwhelming. Every word has weight. Every glance carries a message. Every room holds a vibration that their nervous system is now tuned to. And unless they learn to anchor themselves, to protect their energy, to discern what's theirs and what isn't, et burn out. That's another clause in the contract of awareness. You must master your emotional body. You can no longer afford to be reactive. You can no longer afford to drown in feelings that aren't yours. You must learn to feel without attachment, to observe without absorption, to surrender without losing your center. And that, my friend, is not easy. It takes discipline. It takes humility. It takes the willingness to be wrong, even when your intuition screams that you're right. Because sometimes awareness is not about knowing, it's about unknowing, about peeling back the layers of certainty to find what's real beneath it all. So now you stand here between two worlds, no longer asleep, but not yet fully awake, in the threshold, the in-between, the place where everything is shifting, but nothing has settled. And this is where most chosen ones feel the most lost, because the old tools no longer work, and the new ones haven't fully arrived. But this is not a dead end. It's a chrysalis. And if you stay with it, if you breathe through the confusion, the grief, the rage, the longing, you will emerge, not as the person you were, not even as the person you thought you wanted to be, but as something truer, raw, wiser. So I ask you again, are you willing to be uncomfortable, knowing that discomfort is the soil where your next self is growing? The third contract is waiting. Temptation of power, the silent price of spiritual influence. Once you've endured the silence of isolation and survived the madness of awareness, the third hidden contract begins to surface, not with a whisper, but with an offer, not from above, but from within. It is the contract of power, and unlike the others, this one comes dressed in gold. It does not threaten you. It seduces you. It tells you that you've earned the right to lead, to speak, to teach, to command. And maybe you have. But this contract is the most dangerous of all, not because of what it gives you, but because of what it asks in return. Power is not evil, but it is heavy. It magnifies everything you are. If you are bitter, it makes you cruel. If you are loving, it makes you magnetic. If you are confused, it makes you chaotic. And if you are not yet rooted in your soul, power will use your wounds as weapons. That's the unwritten clause of this contract. You will be tempted to use your light to dominate instead of illuminate. In the spiritual world, this temptation is everywhere. Once you become aware, people begin to listen. They feel your energy. They crave your presence. They want answers. They ask for healing. They project onto you the image of a savior, a leader, a guide. And if you're not careful, you start to believe it. You start to think it's you they're drawn to. But it's not. It's the divine moving through you. You are the vessel, not the source. But the ego wants to be the source. It wants to be worshipped. It wants to be right. It wants control. And that's where many chosen ones fall. They begin to build kingdoms instead of temples. They create followers instead of awakening leaders. They speak not to serve, but to be admired. And the cost? Their authenticity, their connection, their soul. So let me ask you this: when you speak your truth, are you serving your soul or your image? This is the moment of reckoning, because the contract of power will test your integrity more than any suffering ever could. Suffering humbles you. Power exposes you. It reveals the fractures you tried to hide beneath your wisdom. It summons the shadows you thought you'd outgrown. It brings the old traumas back to the surface, not to punish you, but to ask, are you still carrying this? Are you still letting this lead you? Some of the most gifted, awakened souls fall here. They become addicted to validation. They mistake attention for alignment. They start channeling not the divine, but their own unmet needs wrapped in spiritual language. And they convince themselves they're helping when in fact, they're feeding. You must be ruthless with yourself here. You must question your motives constantly. You must be willing to walk away from platforms, from praise, from influence if they begin to pull you out of alignment. Because the contract of power is not about being seen. It's about being true, and truth is often invisible. Look around. The world is full of voices speaking in the name of truth. But how many are speaking from silence, from stillness, from surrender? How many are willing to admit when they don't know? How many are willing to lose followers for the sake of honesty? You must be that kind of voice, because there is a power that is not loud but eternal, a power that does not demand but invites, a power that does not seek to impress but to awaken. And that power only flows through those who have emptied themselves of ego, who have died to the idea of being special, who have surrendered the need to be seen and instead have chosen to see. So if you feel called to lead, to speak, to guide good, that is part of your purpose. But do it from the wound that's been healed, not the one still bleeding. Speak from the place that has touched the divine, not the place still grasping for it. And when the world offers you fame, influence, authority, pause. Ask yourself, what part of me is saying yes? This contract offers you much, but the price is steep. You must carry your power like a flame in the wind, carefully, reverently, with the constant awareness that it can either warm the world or burn it down. So now we arrive at the edge of the final truth. You have survived the silence, the awakening, and the temptation. But the path is not yet complete. There is still one more truth, one more clause in the hidden agreement. And it is the hardest of all. The final debt, why the chosen must die before they truly live. There is a final debt every dark chosen one must pay, one that cannot be negotiated, delayed, or escaped. It is not written in words, but etched into the soul the moment you said yes to this path. Whether you remember saying yes or not doesn't matter. Your life has already been shaped by that hidden consent. And now, standing at the threshold of your own becoming, the last contract reveals itself. You must die before you truly live. Not a physical death, though for some, it may feel that way. This is a death of identity, a death of attachment, a death of every version of yourself that was built to survive, but not to thrive. You see, the moment you were marked as chosen, the universe began the slow, deliberate dismantling of your false self, not to destroy you, but to reveal what has always been buried beneath the masks. And the truth is, you've already been dying in pieces. Every time you let go of someone who no longer resonated with your frequency. Every time you walked away from a job, a belief, a pattern that used to define you. Every time you chose silence over noise, authenticity over approval, courage over comfort, you died a little. But now, the final death comes. The death of the one who still thinks they are in control. The one who still fears surrender. The one who still clings to the identity of the chosen one. Because even that label must go. This is the paradox. Only when you stop needing to be chosen do you finally embody what it means. You stop performing. You stop proving. You stop chasing some imagined finish line of enlightenment. And you begin to be, not as a role, not as a teacher, not as a healer, but as presence itself, as truth itself, as love, not the emotion, but the frequency that births galaxies. But this death hurts. It's the ego's last stand. It screams that you're losing yourself. It whispers that if you let go, there'll be nothing left. And in a way, it's right. There will be nothing left of the illusion, of the story, of the fear. What remains is the real you, the eternal one, the one who has walked through fire after fire and still chooses to open their heart, the one who has faced the abyss and returned with eyes that see beyond this world. So I ask you now, are you willing to die to everything you thought you were, to become what you truly are? Because that is the final step. And it's not glamorous, it's quiet, it's often lonely. It requires you to sit in the ashes of your former self with no promise of who you'll become next. It is the sacred in-between, the holy pause, the silence before the song. But if you endure it, if you don't run, distract, numb, or escape, something miraculous happens. A rebirth, not as someone better, but as someone real. You begin to live, truly live, for the first time, not from fear, not from need, but from alignment, peace, stillness. You no longer chase your purpose. You are your purpose. Your very existence becomes aligned with truth, and the world around you begins to shift, not because you force it, but because reality bends in the presence of someone who has remembered who they are. This is the final gift of the dark path. It strips you, tests you, lures you, and then breaks you, not as punishment, but as preparation for the sacred responsibility of being fully alive in a world half asleep. So now I leave you with this question, the only one that matters. What are you still holding on to that must die so you can finally live? You already know the answer. You've always known. And now, the contract is complete.